At 11:40 p.m., a ship that was called Unsinkable had less than 3 hours left to exist. Nobody on board knew it yet, the ship of dreams. To understand how this happened, you have to understand what the Titanic actually was. She was not just a ship. She was a statement. Over 880 feet long, taller than an 11-story building, carrying more than 2,200 people across the Atlantic in a floating palace of Turkish baths, a swimming pool, a gymnasium, and a grand staircase lit by a glass dome. Newspapers called her unsinkable before she ever left port, not because any engineer promised it outright, but because her design, 16 watertight compartments, any 4 of which could flood and the ship would still stay afloat, seemed to make disaster mathematically impossible. That single word, unsinkable, would follow this ship into history for all the wrong reasons. The morning. April 14, 1912, the Titanic is 4 days into her very first voyage, cutting across the North Atlantic at nearly full speed. On this morning, everything is calm. Passengers stroll the decks. In first class, some are enjoying champagne. In third class, families who sold everything they owned for a ticket to a new life in America pass the time on deck, watching the horizon. Few of them know that all day long, other ships have been sending warnings. 1:42 p.m. The first warning, a nearby steamship radios a message. Ice ahead. It is one of 6 iceberg warnings the Titanic will receive that day. Most are logged. Some are never even delivered to the bridge. 7:30 p.m. The temperature drops, the air grows sharply colder as the sun sets. Passengers notice their breath turning to fog. In the engine rooms, the ship's officers order more speed, not less, hoping to arrive in New York ahead of schedule. It is a decision that, in hindsight, will look almost unbelievable. 9:40 p.m. The last clear warning, another nearby ship sends a message describing 3 large icebergs directly in the Titanic's path. The Titanic's radio operators are overwhelmed, busy sending passenger messages back to shore, personal telegrams about dinner plans and business deals. The warning is received, but in the rush of the evening, its urgency does not fully reach the men steering the ship. 10 p.m. Eyes on the water, 2 lookouts take their post in the crow's nest, high above the deck. The night is unusually still. No moon. No wind. Which sounds calm, but is actually one of the most dangerous conditions of all, because without waves breaking against it, an iceberg in the dark water becomes almost invisible until it is far too close. 11:40 p.m. The iceberg, a lookout in the crow's nest, spots something dark rising out of the black water dead ahead. He rings the warning bell 3 times and phones the bridge with 4 words. Iceberg, right ahead. The ship turns, but it is far too massive, moving far too fast, to avoid what happens next. The iceberg scrapes along the starboard side, below the waterline, out of sight. Almost no one on board feels more than a faint shudder. Most passengers go back to sleep, but here is what almost nobody on that ship understood in that moment. The scrape they barely felt had just doomed over 1,500 of them. 11:50 p.m. The flooding begins. Below deck, the true damage becomes clear. The iceberg has torn open several compartments along the hull. The Titanic was designed to survive flooding in up to 4 of these compartments. 5, possibly 6, are now filling with freezing seawater. 12:05 a.m. The order No. 1 wanted to give. The order is given to uncover the lifeboats. But the Titanic carries lifeboats for barely half the people on board. That number was legal at the time, but it will become one of the most devastating facts in maritime history. 12:45 a.m. The first lifeboat is lowered, carrying only 28 people, in a boat built to hold 65. Many passengers still don't believe the ship could possibly sink. Some refuse to board the boats at all. 1:15 a.m. The tilt becomes undeniable, the ship's bow is now visibly lower in the water. Panic spreads. Crew members begin holding back male passengers to prioritize women and children, a decision that will shape who lives and who does not. Below deck, in third class, many passengers are still struggling to even find their way up through unfamiliar corridors toward the boats. 1:30 a.m. The band plays on the deck, the ship's musicians continue performing. Survivors would later describe hearing music carrying across the water even as the lifeboats pulled away, a detail that has become one of the most haunting parts of this story. Not one member of that band would survive the night. 2:05 a.m. The final lifeboat, the last lifeboat, leaves the ship. More than 1,500 people remain on board, with no way off. 2:18 a.m. The lights go out, the ship's lights flicker and die. In the darkness, witnesses later describe a groaning, tearing sound as the massive vessel begins to break apart under its own weight, the stern rising into the night sky before crashing back down. 2:20 a.m. The Titanic disappears beneath the surface of the North Atlantic. The people left in the water face something almost as deadly as the sinking itself. Water this cold, near freezing, can kill a person in under 30 minutes. 4 a.m. Rescue, the Carpathia, racing through the night after receiving the Titanic's distress call, arrives and begins pulling survivors from lifeboats. Just over 700 people are rescued. More than 1,500 are not. In the aftermath, the world was stunned. This was supposed to be the safest ship ever built. Within weeks, international maritime law changed forever. Ships were now required to carry enough lifeboats for every single person on board. 24-hour radio watch became mandatory, so no distress call could ever again go unheard through the night. In many ways, the rules that make ocean travel safe today were written in direct response to the mistakes made on this one voyage. Investigators would spend years trying to answer one question. How did the safest ship ever built become one of history's deadliest disasters, in under 3 hours, on a calm, clear night, with almost no wind at all? Some blame the speed. Some blame the missing binoculars in the crow's nest. Some blame the lifeboat shortage. The truth is, it was not one single failure. It was a chain of small decisions, made by ordinary people, none of whom believed they were making a fatal one. Somewhere, 2.5 miles beneath the surface of the North Atlantic, the wreck of the Titanic still rests, slowly being consumed by rust and time. But the story of what happened in those final hours has never faded, because it asks a question that still applies to anyone, on any ship, in any century. What happens when we trust a system so completely, that we stop preparing for the moment it fails?